Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Revolving Change Podcast, where we talk about change and how it affects your career and in business. So I'm Joanna. I'll be one of your hosts today. I'm a junior coach here at Revolving Change. Here with me today is Mr. Isaac, also one of our junior coaches here at Revolving Change. And of course, here with us today is our founder, Mr. Jorge Loebl. Mr. Loebl, could you please tell us something about yourself?
Well, it's all my fault. So I founded the thing. Well, I'm coming from the quality and productivity business. I'm a former, well, still kind of analog dinosaur. I come long time back with many decades of experience, but mainly coming from productivity and quality in that sequence. And during those years of implementing quality and productivity and quality improvements, two things became apparent to me, which I learned very early. One is that unless you measure it, it will not happen. Measuring everything is essential for change to take place. And I use the word change. Everything is related to change. The common denominator in everything I've done for the last several decades, 4 decades. I know I'm lucky not to look that old, but I am that old. 4 decades of change has shown me that the essence of change has not changed. The conditions for change have remained the same, and they're all focused on people. Technology has modified dramatically when I think back at the very beginning. So it's just flabbergasting the change, the transformation that technology has brought us and how it connects us and allows us to work. But the problems arising at the time from productivity and from quality that had to do with people, that change has remained the same till today. So the pain managers and leaders who are those I work with mainly, or we work with mainly, the pain they've had decades ago is exactly the same pain they have today. Hence, transformational change, transformational human engineering, which is our trademark, is what we do.
Right. Yeah. So that's a quick intro for what we do at Revolving Change here for everyone who's listening. We are actually in the business of change, and that is our main topic for today. Why is there a need for change, and why are people so afraid of changing, especially when it surprises, change is the only ever constant thing in this world, but not a lot of us are open to changing, once we see other people change. So, Jorge, why is change important?
Well, you have 2 choices. You change or you change. So either you're going to be part of the process of change, you're going to participate, learn to grow with it, and maybe hopefully learn to enjoy it. I do. Many people do. Many of our clients do learn to enjoy change, to make it a challenge, to make it a perspective of the future. Others will not, thinking they're not changing. They are, because everything else moves forward in their lives. And while they stay wherever they stay, their points of reference keep moving, keep changing, keep pivoting. So whether they like it or not, they are changing because their points of reference, their anchors, keep modifying, keep changing all the time. So the problem is they fall behind further and further. Their lives become more complicated. Their careers stagnant, if not damaged sometimes, or ending sometimes even. And they're not part of this success story. People are not afraid of change. They're afraid of their own change, but they love everybody else changing. When you're in a business at a client, you say, well, we need to change this and this and this. And everybody, yeah, great, but start with somebody else. Not with me. I'm okay. I don't need to change. So the fear is on a personal basis, on a generic basis, people understand that change is necessary, that change is advantageous most of the time. We fear what we don't understand. We fear, when you ask people, they fear darkness. Many people feel darkness, and nobody really enjoys darkness. Why? Because the lack of clarity automatically makes you hesitant, makes you insecure. You enter a room that is dark and you've never been before, you're going to be disoriented. You don't know where to go. You don't know if there's an obstacle, if there is a pit, if there is something in your way. You don't know nothing. The more clarity you have, in this case, think of light, the more you're going to be willing to maybe modify the way you do things, maybe increase the speed at which you do them, or change another path, another way of doing things. So the main obstacle for change that leads to people fearing change is they don't understand why they need to change and where the change is going to take them. You don't know what the risks are. So clarity and understanding why we need to change and where the change is going to take us is essential for people to begin accepting and adopting change.
Yeah, that's a good thought to put about it. But since when it comes to change, there's a lot of things that are unknown, right? How much can one prepare themselves for change in order for them to actually take a step towards change? Because there's no guarantee, right? That no matter
No,
how
never.
much clarity
Never.
you seek,
That's the only guarantee you have. That there is no guarantee.
how then do we encourage people to make change? Because I do firmly believe that we have the power within us to make change, but we just don't do it.
Very often is, like I said, there's a lack of clarity.
Uh-huh.
So massive clarity is the first step to, or as much as possible, clarity of purpose, direction, and conditions, the path we need to take, where this is taking us. That is critical to change. There has to be a personal benefit in the change. We don't change just necessarily for altruistic reasons. We change because there is an interest. If you look at the way people have been, and this is something I've been following for 3 decades, climate change, I've been very conscious. I'm a scuba diver. I'm very conscious about the oceans. I'm a rescue diver. I'm a skydiver. I'm very connected to nature, and I have been connected throughout my life to nature. And only when people start seeing that their personal sphere, their personal future, their interests, their children and grandchildren's future became questionable and entered a risk area, then they start getting interested in changing environmental behavior. Until then, people didn't, because it didn't affect them personally. In business, you see it all the time. When we go into a corporate client and we talk about the improvements needed, we always start talking about systems first, then we talk about attitudes, and then we talk at the end about behaviors. If we would start talking about behaviors first, we would never get anywhere. When you talk about systems and people understand that systems can be improved and the impact of systems on day-to-day work and on everything else is positive, people will start becoming open to the idea. People will become more aware that those changes will implement.
How do you come to a point of it? How do you come to a tipping point? That you did say, though, that once it directly affects a person, that's when they see the need for their personal change. And that you come to that point with clarity, right? But yeah. In my personal experience as well, I'm well educated. I have a lot of clarity about the matter and know for a fact that I need to change, and yet I still don't do it. How do I get myself to cross that line?
Well, it's a very generic question that has a myriad of personal answers.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're talking about yourself, and you're educated, I'm not, right? Which is why you work with me, because I learn from you, because you're educated, I'm not. I'm self-made. Same with Isaac. The answer to the question will be very personal in terms of each individual, and that's what we call life application training. We do management skills laboratory, management skills training, management skills laboratory. We experiment on how each individual can cross that bridge, find the bridge and cross that line, like you said. Mm-hmm. I like more the idea of a bridge, because the line is momentous. A bridge is more of a process, and often when you see the bridge from the distance, and I like the analogy of the bridges, you see, oh, we got something to cross. There is a bridge out there. Now, I think that when individuals, and now using answering the question you asked, individuals know they need to change, and they don't, is because the pain ain't there. Pain is the ultimate motivator to change. I like Sandler's definition of pain is the deep-seated emotional need to change. Deep-seated emotional need. If the emotional need is not there, then it's very easy not to change. If there is an emotional need which touches your heart, touches your soul, and you have this feeling that you really need to change, you will change. But if you don't have pain, I mean, how easy is it not to go to the dentist when you're out of pain, when you have no pain? How easy is it to go to the dentist when you're in pain? And I'm using a simple example that applies to all of us, right?
Yeah.
And to some of you recently, right? Literally. To me too. But, you know, when I'm a post-cancer, I'm very lucky. I'm a post-cancer patient. I'm very grateful. But when I went into it, I went through a lot of pain to get treated. But the emotional need was massive, because it's a question, do I want to live or want to die? How much more emotional does it get to have to decide, do I want to live or do I want to die? You go like, let me think about it. Well, you didn't think too long, right? Although sometimes we know that maybe people choose the other choice, make the other choice. The emotions, the deep-seated emotional need is the fundamental pivot to change or not to change.
Yeah, that is
That's it.
No, that absolutely makes a lot of sense though. But there's like situations wherein the deep-seated need comes to a point where it's the last resort. But since we're talking about change now and moving into a more positive way of encouraging people to change, what do you, it's still a thing about change, right? Unless someone feels the pain really bad, that's when it's like the last resort, I have to change. Like, what if it's too late to change the last minute? The opportunity, if it was in work, the opportunity's gone. If it was business, you wait until the last minute, you're now bankrupt and things like that. So how do you,
Possibly.
right? So how do you put yourself in position, even though it's not that painful yet for you to cause the change, like you're being forced? If I look at it in that way, it feels like I have to wait until the pain forces me to change.
Becomes unbearable.
Right? So is there a way
now
that
we need to.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. No, finish your question.
Yeah, how do we already feel that tiny sting and we want to find the bridge and cross over the bridge then. So how do we
A tiny sting is not painful, right? You said the right word, a tiny sting.
Yeah.
And as long as it remains a tiny sting, we can live with a tiny sting. We can put a Band-Aid on it. We can take a painkiller. We can think the pain away. I used as a child think some pains away, and I managed to have the power in my body not to feel the pain. That's how scared I was. So the fear of the cure was greater than the fear of the pain.
Yeah.
So the deep-seated emotion was, I'm more fearful of the solution than I am of living with the pain. So I'd rather live with the pain. I mean, and I know I would like to make clear differentiation between personal and business. Because on person, I know from people that have been very, very sick, and they'd rather play the ostrich, which means they were scared so much of the outcome that preferred to live in the fantasy of the present, ignore the pain that was coming, and live with the pain they had. I think you used a very good example when you said, we know things are bad, and if we don't take action and change, we go bankrupt. Well, yes. Why do companies go bankrupt? Because it does happen. Why does it happen? Because they did not change. So the question is, why didn't they? Well, they were too scared of the steps to take to change that they decided to live with the pain until it became too unbearable and killed them. And that's the reality of business. And how we do it, well, that is the revolving change set of skills that we have, and how we motivate, and how we first diagnose what the causes of the problems are. So the understanding the causes is the clarity we give. So here is why things are bad. Here is what's going to look like at the end of the process. We don't talk about what the steps are, because if we start talking about the steps, and I'm trying to answer your question on how we do it, if we start talking about the steps, you're going to get scared. In some countries, they call it shitless. You're going to be terrified of all the things you're going to have to do, all the things are going to change, and everything is going to be different. It's going to be difficult, and oh my God, I don't want that. If I show you how much pain you're in today, because we do a diagnosis and we do an evaluation, we do an analysis of the operation if it's about systems, and we show the behaviors and attitudes that prevail in a company, and compare what's going to be like once we are done. And you can see the sunshine, you can see the peace, you can see the harmony, you can see the satisfaction, you can see the motivation, you can see the results, financial, operational. Then you start to become willing to start talking about the steps it's going to take to get there. So it's important to understand that we first talk about what's bad and how great it's going to be when it gets good. And only then we're going to talk about the steps that are going to take us there. Because if we talk about the steps first, we'll never get to really shine the light onto what's going to be like when we're done. So it's important that the steps become of course we need to go through this because we want to go there where we want to go. We want to stop the pain, get to the sunshine, to use the allegory, and we need to go through the steps. Another issue of another aspect of what we do is not everything needs to change. So understanding, and I called it earlier, zones of stability, understanding what does not need to change is as important as understanding what needs to change. Very often people say, change, I need to change everything. Well, if you're going to move, why is that people don't like to move? Because it changes absolutely everything. But many people resent it because they don't have clarity of what's going to be like when they're there. I researched it first. When I started skydiving, I researched what it's going to be like to fly without having feathers, with a plastic bag on my back. Because that's what it is at the end of the day. You say, well, you got to be nuts. Well, I thought I was nuts. Some people say I am, but let's keep that for another podcast. Or when I started scuba diving, and I started learning to deal with sharks, and there's a lot of certification, and I like wrecks, and I like much stuff. We don't go there now. But the point is clarity. I want to understand where I'm today and where I'm going to go. And if where I'm going to go is what I want, and that is understanding the change, and either from desire or pain, and my personal life has been also desire, but when we talk about business, we're talking about the pain is strong enough, and I show you the world without that pain, then you're going to be willing to start listening to and understanding and adopting the steps that we need to change, but then focusing on the zones of stability that need to change, which is only a portion of what we do, is not everything. And that is a crucial point where change management becomes extremely delicate, that you want to focus clearly on what needs to change, but we need to reinforce, restate, remind of everything that will not change, which is often a lot. And that makes change manageable. All of a sudden, it's not a fruit salad, it's just an apple, it's just a banana. It's not just all the fruits mixed up together. So it's not a blender, it's very selective actions we're going to take.
I like the way you described discovering how you can change by basically what you would call zooming out, right? You're saying you need to understand where you are and where you want to go, and then you can figure out the steps to get there. So key thing there being to zoom out. And to add more to what Joanna said, or your question in response to it, how do you change when you know you need to change and you even know how to change, but you still don't want to change? Because I feel that so much myself all the time, particularly when I'm working. There are some things that I just don't feel like doing, but I know that if I do, it's going to unlock such a great new phase in my career, and I still don't do it. One thing I found that has helped me, that I'm still trying to do more of, is zooming out even further, but looking in the opposite direction. So you can look forward at what the experience would be like once you solve it. But for me, one thing I find quite powerful is zooming out and looking backwards. What will happen if I keep going down this path of not changing? What will my life look like if I continue suffering with this for the next 10 years? Like, that far of a timeline. 10 years of rot looks like what? Then, okay, that's actually quite scary. I really don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that much of a whatever it may be, right? You can define that for yourself. So that I find that if I can really sit down and just write that out in paper and read it to myself out loud, then that's enough to scare me to go, I really got to be serious about changing now, because I do not want to be that guy, and I will be that guy if I don't tackle this.
I mean, what you're describing is extremely important, and I think is right on the money, but you realize what you do, right?
What's
you
that?
create the pain that you're going to go into. you visualize and you describe the pain, and you go like, no, I don't want to hammer each one of my fingers every day in the morning when I get up. No, that's not the kind of life I want. And they would just not be able to manage it. Because it takes a lot of courage and a lot of self-discipline to understand that this path is suicide and this path is success. And of course, I don't want to take the path of suicide, but the steps to go that avoid that path are also very painful. You know, how painful is it to go to, not today because of technology, but in my days when I was young, going to the dentist was an extremely painful experience. Because I did not know how painful it was not to go to the dentist, but it would have taken me years of not going to the dentist to discover it would have been too late. Now, I had not the ability, and very often people do not have the ability that you described you have, which it's very commendable and it's very advisable, but it sometimes goes beyond the expectation of what's realistic to expect that people manage to do, is to visualize what's going to be like when you do another 1, 2, 5, 10 years of the same, more of the same, right? Because people don't have the ability to visualize, well, what's going to be like if I don't brush my teeth for 10 years? Well, I don't know. I've never done it. You know, when you take medicine, but it's very interesting because, you know, I have arthritis and I have many of these things that old people get, although I'm not old, but still. And then they ask you, well, you've been taking this natural stuff for, and I don't want to advertise now or anything, this natural stuff now for 10 years. Has it worked? I said, that's a brilliant question. How can I answer? I would have to go 10 years back, not take it for 10 years, and then compare. I have no way of knowing what would have been like if I had not taken it. I have no way of saying. Now, has it been a placebo that has helped me for 10 years and I paid a ton of money and I've been cheated on it? Maybe I have, and I'm happy about it. So don't remind me. Don't tell me how dumb I have been. On the other hand, maybe it worked, but you know, this ability of saying like, well, what's going to be like if I don't take this medicine for the next 10 years and I have arthritis? What's it going to be like? Well, you can look at pictures of people that have had this disease for 10 years, see what they look like, make a comparison, and make an intelligent decision or an informed decision. Like, okay, I'm going to go that path. I'm going to avoid this. I'm going to take this path. But very often it's not possible. I mean, but I think it's very commendable if people can do what you describe. I think it's fantastic. In business, you can, right? If I continue having a material yield of X%, and if I continue to being overpriced in the market by so much percent, and I'm losing market share at this rate, I know that within X number of months, I'm done. I'm out of business. Very simple.
Wow.
Actually, it's a fascinating subject. I mean, it's a fascinating subject.
For sure, you could look at it at that high level. I didn't mean that though, because that's obviously not where I'm at yet. I hope to get there at one point in the future to be C-level of some kind. But an example would be more of a restructuring of work environment. You know, you're moving, someone new is coming in, you're not quite sure how that's going to look, how it's going to work out. And I think the first thing I noticed whenever I feel resistance, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, Jorge, if feeling resistance to something is a sign of a need for change. Because if I feel resistance to change happening, is that because I'm too attached to an identified belief that I keep on telling myself is true? That, oh, someone new is going to come in, maybe they're going to step on my toes, and because I'm not worthy enough in my head, that's going to make it obvious to everyone else that I'm not good enough. And all of a sudden, these self-attached beliefs start eating at you, which then also makes you afraid to take, or not even take, but bask in change, because change is very freeing once you become used to the resistance that starts the process. At least that's how I feel in my short experience. Like, what is that? Does that kind of tie into what you were saying too, with not necessarily being able to see the negative side, but using it as a marker, that feeling of resistance?
Well, you brought in a lot of stuff, and it's in the blender. It's very difficult to deal with a blender. Like rest in peace, Henry Kissinger. I was in a conference in Moscow a long time ago. Gorbachev was still, you know, he started perestroika and glasnost, and I felt compelled to want to see that, how Russia started, the Soviet Union still started changing. And there was a conference with Henry Kissinger, and he said something which, I mean, I keep repeating. I mean, I'm sure you heard me say it before. It's very easy to take an aquarium and make fish soup out of it. Now try to make an aquarium out of fish soup. That's a different story. And what you just did is you gave me the aquarium, now you made fish soup of it, and you asked me to make an aquarium again. So I'm going to try.
Okay.
I'm going to try. Yeah, because the things you brought in are very important, but they're all interconnected. But that is, but it's very important. Right? It's a good example because the description you gave us now is the typical like, oh, everything is changing, everything is going to need to change, everything is, and then this everything, yeah, and takes away the zones of stability that will not change. Okay, and we see that this gray cloud and this dark place and there's very hardly any light shining. So you don't see the obstacles, you don't see the pitfalls, you don't see the dangers. And all that insecurity feeds into your own insecurity, right? Now, so obviously, and I don't want to call it lack of self-confidence because I don't like the description, lack of self-confidence. The degree of self-confidence, sometimes it's very high, sometimes it's low. Sometimes it's very high for one thing and very low for another. You can be a great sportsman and physically being in top shape and be very self-confident about your performance. And then when you get to compete because of fear, your self-confidence goes down. So even you're the same person, same conditions, your self-confidence may move up or down dramatically for 1 second to the next. Or you're in front of somebody who you fear or somebody you admire, your adrenaline gets pumping, your brain goes in tilt like we're playing pinball, and that's it. You're done. You go blank. It's happened to me too.
Right.
So, I mean, we are human at the end of the day, or we are supposed to be. We believe we are human. The key is self-confidence, in my opinion. If you fear somebody's going to come and maybe step on your toes, and you could also reverse the coin and say, well, I'm going to be stepping on that person's toes. I'm going to be putting barriers in this person's way and not let this person get in here and get in there. And then I'm securing myself, I'm building my castle, and I'm letting you go down this path of darkness, lack of information, lack of clarity.
Yeah.
But you're focusing on yourself, right? You're fearing what's going to happen to you, so you're self-centered. But that's our insecurity, right? That's because we feel that somebody may know more, may be better than we are. Why do we fear that? Because we're not self-confident. I'm not worried, and I don't pretend to be Mr. Self-Confidence. I'm not. I'm an introvert. I may not sound like one, but I am one. And I fight very hard my introversion. It takes me takes a lot of my energy to overcome introversion. But I'm very conscious about the fact that there is lots of people out there that know so much more than I do. So either I can fear them and keep them away from me, or I can embrace them and learn from them. My choice has been I want to embrace them, which is why you both work with me, because I learn from you. You're much smarter and better educated than I am in many ways and many things. There's one thing you don't have that I have, which is my experience. And nobody can take away what I have, as long as I'm staying healthy in my mind, of course. But as long as I'm healthy and have the energy, you cannot take away my experience. You cannot take away the things I've seen and how I connect the dots. But I can learn from your techniques. I can learn from you what you've learned. So we're going to cross-pollinate. I'm going to share with you what I know. You're going to share with me what you know. And we all three and our team is going to continue to grow and be stronger and stronger. But the moment one of us feels insecure about oneself, starts hurting the team and starts hurting oneself. Because then I'm not going to open up. I'm not going to volunteer. I'm going to be fearful. What if you step on my toes? Well, maybe they won't step on your toes. Then put your toes back. Bear with the pain and deal with it as it happens. It's part of dealing with people.
Yeah.
Else you get yourself a nice cave somewhere in the Alps. Find a cave and there will be nobody stepping on your toes. But if you work in a community, you work in society, you coach, you mentor, you work with people, it's going to happen. You're going to have clients that will step on your toes, and they don't do it necessarily on purpose. It just happens.
Right.
And we're going to feel what when they step on your toes? You're going to feel what? Pain. And you're going to learn to deal with pain. And then you're going to change something to either make the person, and I mean, I've used this expression literally. Has it happened to you? You are in a public transportation, which I use a lot for ecological reasons, particularly. And people step on your toes, literally step on your foot. You know what I do? I smile and say, "Excuse me, you mind getting off my foot?" And you should see people's reactions, like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And I do it on purpose because it's not terrible. It hurts a little bit, but it just puts change in a total different perspective. Takes away the negative, takes away the aggression. When you tell people, "Get off my foot," which is something probably they'd never heard before. I love the reaction, and I like what it happens, because 99.99% is a very warm, favorable, friendly reaction you get. So how you deal with pain is absolutely essential.
Right.
That was a long story for a very short question.
Yeah, it was, but I got a lot of value out of that, and particularly in the last part just now, that perception plays a key role in your capacity or willingness to change. Because like you said, if you perceive the person stepping on your foot through the lens of having a bad day yourself already, then you're just going to feel violent, aggravated. Maybe if you say something, they're going to bite back at you, then you don't, and you sit there and you suffer, right? But you're only suffering because of your own imagination. So it's a good point that you raised there, that also you have to remember to kind of frame bait to some extent and zoom out and go, okay, maybe this isn't anywhere near as bad as the things I'm believing. And maybe I should dissect why I'm thinking these things in the first place. If I've had no one say it directly to my face that, "Oh, this person's going to come in and step on your toes," or whatever the example may be, this new software is going to come in and micromanage the hell out of you and make you feel like a piece of crap because you feel like you're then not doing anything, whatever it may be. So that was good. Thank you for that.
I like the example of stepping on the toes, because I think it never happens that people will come next to you and step on your toes on purpose.
Yeah.
Unless the children are playing with you and they step on your toes and they grab your legs, like my kids used to do when they were tiny. But when somebody steps on your toes, they don't realize they're stepping on your toes. And the point, the analogy, the key message I'm trying to send is, very often in business, people don't realize that they have crossed a line. They don't realize they're stepping on your toes. They're not aware. They're not conscious. It's not done on purpose. Okay? If you have good guardrails, and as long as you're moving within these guardrails, there are certain rules that apply. Despite the rules, because we're human, we are perfectly imperfect. This is the way I like to define myself. I'm perfectly imperfect. I'm grossly imperfect, and I'm very happy being imperfect, because that is what allows me, gives me the potential to learn a lot and continue to learn. And that is what thrives me every day in our business, that I love learning and reading and listening to you and listening to the other members of the team and listening to clients. So the key is to understand that things are not always on purpose. They're not by design. They just happen to be, because people are maybe not equally well prepared. And when they are starting to work together, there is a disconnection, and you need to get them on the same page. Clarity, knowledge, and that's what makes change dicey and dangerous sometimes and scary. So yeah, that the change is it's involuntary very often. The stepping on somebody's toes is involuntary, it's not done on purpose. And learning to have adopting the skills and learning, this is why our skills training is so important, to learn to give the positive feedback in a way that will help the other person realize, and we both pivot and find a way to work together, improve in an improved way, is like telling this person with a smile, like, "Would you mind getting off my foot?" It just, it makes a whole difference. Like you said it, you rightly said, like, "You're stepping on my feet, you jerk." Well, I mean, maybe the other person is also having a bad day, you get punched in the nose, right? Or the other person is having a bad day and starts crying. I mean, anything can happen, but nothing bad will happen. The worst that can happen, and the worst that has happened to me when I did that, is people go like, they find it strange that sorry, and they go away. That's fine. That's okay. It's not a problem. But the other 99.9% were extremely favorable. So
you mentioned, Jorge, that's a very good example there of and I think it's key for a lot of people, because if it's key for myself, I know that there's a lot of people who also think like me, who are maybe, let's say, higher in trait
You
conscientiousness.
hope. You hope.
I
You don't
hope.
know.
So that I'm not that weird, I can justify myself. No, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But you were saying that oftentimes things just happen because they're happening, and it's not because of the ideas we make up in our head out of fear-based beliefs. So if I feel like someone's stepping on my toes, or someone's encroaching on my freedom to do whatever it is I need to do to get stuff done, that the first thing I should do, or at least what I got from what you said, is communicate.
Mhm.
And you rightly made the example that you can choose to communicate either aggressively or softly and make a joke out of it. But could you try and expand on that in more specific context of the work environment, like maybe even role play at some point and say, I'm upset with something you've done. How do I go about communicating that in a way that doesn't make me not do it at all because I'm too afraid to?
I will answer that, but not today. That in itself would be a podcast for 5 hours. Okay, I mean, we're talking about feedback, we're talking about communication. I think it's a very valid question, very rich question, but we don't have the scope, and I don't have enough water to keep my mouth wet and speak that long. I guess I need to get some more water. But I think the question is extremely important.
Yeah.
And there is not just how we communicate, it's not what we say, how we say it, also when we say it. So there is a number, it's a kaleidoscope. Remember the concept of kaleidoscope, which I like so much. There's so many components to it that is a long conversation. You need to take into account the recipient of the information. With some people, you're going to communicate in one way. With other people, you're going to communicate in a different way. With somebody of a younger generation like yourselves, I communicate in one way. When I deal with another dinosaur like me, I communicate in a different way. Millennials, my daughters are millennials, are very specific in many ways. The Z generations are even more different. Yes, I can answer the question, but not on this podcast. I think it's way too long.
Sure.
And I think that would be very interesting to plan a podcast that we're going to start dealing with feedback. But as a matter of fact, I can tell you already that feedback itself will not be a podcast. It will be a collection of podcasts, because it's a vast subject. I'm working on the courses that we need on feedback, which is one of the foundations of leadership and management for leaders and managers and entrepreneurs.
Oh, okay. So this podcast has been very, very meaty, if I may say so myself. Like, there were a lot of topics.
You're not vegetarian, are you?
No, I like my steak. Medium rare, please. There was a lot of information. And I think what I enjoy about this podcast is something that you said, Jorge, is that we learn from each other. So, like, to just wrap things up a little bit, I want to ask each one of you, because I learned a lot from just this discussion that all three of us are having. If there's one thing that imprinted, like, left an impression on you today, and what advice would you give someone who's like trying to understand or deal with change? I mean, I'm going to go ahead. There was one thing earlier that like a light bulb that fell in my head, because we were talking about people don't experience the pain enough in order to cause them to change, right? And then Isaac comes in and talks about what he does, looking at it at a 10-year perspective. And Jorge, you were like, that's creating the pain. And for me, that's absolutely important. Like, you don't need to wait to experience the pain. Just imagining and creating the pain, man, that's going to change your trajectory. I mean, making a change now, then 5 years later, then down the road. Yeah, for sure. You're never going to be able to say completely for sure if it's a big difference of making the change now or later, because you'll never know, because you made a choice now. But isn't it better to know the earlier? You know, the earlier you know, the better it is for you to take action rather than 5 years down the line and regret things. For me, regretting something is the worst. I'd rather go into the what if rather than be haunted by the what if 10 years down the line. You know what I'm saying? So for me, for you guys listening, create the pain. If you're wondering if you should do something, create the pain now and stop wondering. Create the pain, take the next step, and go dash through that bridge and cross the bridge. Who wants to go next?
Rich. Isaac?
I would say the richest element I got from this conversation is Jorge reminding us all that it's too easy to try and think our way out of every single situation. Sometimes we can overanalyze things. Sometimes we just think too much, right? Like, oh, this is now happening because this person hates me, or this is going to make it hard for me to show that I'm valuable, or whatever the change may be, wherever that resistance comes up, maybe thinking less about it could also help some of us too. Thinking less and just going, all right, this is a black and white thing. Do I want to go in this direction and improve and grow and explore and, go into the unknown and face this challenge with glee, as you might say? Or will I just sit here and sulk and stay in these stagnant waters and feel safe, but then go nowhere and maybe start, getting flies? So that for me was helpful. It's like, just be more willing to go with the resistance of it's okay to seek change. And you don't have to know why everything is happening, but just know that you do need to change and focus on that and that alone. I think for me is a good reminder. So yes.
For me, with the quality of the questions was excellent that you both asked, which reminds me a lot of questions that some clients ask. Now you have the courage that clients often don't have because they have a vested interest in not losing what they got. So they're scared of the answer they're going to get. So very often asking the right question takes courage because you might not like the answer you're going to get. I mean, I've had that hundreds of times with clients at very high level. I'm talking about, people like Formula One drivers, which I've coached in the past. I stopped that some years back, but some of them have become friends, and I remember those years. And I will have to warn them, and this is we're talking about expectations. Like, I have to agree with you up front that whatever question you're going to ask me, you probably, most likely, often will not like the answer, and you need to live with that answer and do something with it. And it's binary. You call it black and white. I like to call it rather binary. Is yes or no. It's good or bad. It's go or not go. It's not maybe lots of grays, because lots of grays take you nowhere. You're not going to move one iota, one step, 1 inch if it's gray. It has to be yes or no. It has to be binary. And binary will make you move, make the needle move.
Right.
And so I think the questions were very rich. And I think that my takeaway, the hardest remains still today, getting mentees and coachees, clients, managers, leaders, entrepreneurs, get them to understand that change is not painful if you focus on pain. And now it sounds like a contradiction, but it's not. If you focus on pain and you focus on the pain you're going to avoid, then the pain, it is not painful anymore. It's enjoyable to avoid the pain you're going to feel in the future. Now, I want to make one last comment about imagining the pain, and I think you both were very clear on your thoughts on that. But it's a word of caution I want to raise on that particular point. Not everybody is capable of doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the fear of thinking down that path will stop you, becomes actually the greatest obstacle. So what you regard as a great door opener, as a light bulb, like you, Joanna, mentioned, for many people becomes the greatest obstacle. And it's not a strength. I give you the simple example. I used to be a heavy smoker. Heavy, I mean, I used to smoke 2 packs a day of Marlboro 100s, so long like that, red Marlboros. And I was the smoker that lights one cigarette with the other. I had pals. I mean, my assistants arrive in the morning. I'm a night worker. Well, I'm a 2-shift, sometimes 3-shift worker. But those days, it would arrive in the morning at 8 o'clock to open the office in business coaching. We were in Belgium, in our head office, and they would go like that in the smoke. Then I would go to a hotel and take a nap and then come back. And I mean, I had an ashtray. It was like that. Now, I quit smoking 30 some years ago. And I quit smoking at the time where it was okay to smoke. I mean, you could smoke in planes. I mean, it was a different world than you know today. It was okay to smoke anywhere. We smokers around the world, so to speak. And I realized, and it was not the pain that I imagined I'm going to have cancer and no. It was the fact that I know this is bad for me. I know it cost me a ton of money. I'm gonna tell you what I did because maybe that's the wrong way, but it worked for me. And I decided that also because my daughter was born, my first daughter was born. I thought, no, I don't want her to be exposed to all of this. So I had ulterior motives to start changing, and I did change, and I stopped from one day to the next, as hard as it was, which actually turned out not to be hard. What I did is I calculated how much money I had spent, and at the time I had smoked 2 apartments already in my life. And you could say it's thinking down the path. I said, how many more apartments am I going to smoke? Because this is really literally going out and smoke, literally.
Yeah.
And I said, no way I'm going to be, no effing way I'm going to smoke another apartment. And I quit. So there was a money motivation, right?
Yeah.
And that money is not my driver. Money is not my main motivation. Money is the consequence of what we do, not the objective of what we do. But still, so the point I'm trying to make is for some people it's scary. Why do people have a hard time smoking? I do, I thought it was my last comment. I'm adding one small little thing to it. When I see younger people smoking, younger, I mean in my age, almost everybody's younger, okay? But younger people, I mean in their 30s and younger, smoking. And I see they have, I don't know, I let my gut feel, and so far I've been successful every single time. I approach them and say, can I talk to you about a minute about smoking? And I'm not trying to nag you or upset you. Is that okay? Yeah, sure. And then I explain to them that I used to be a smoker. I quit smoking 30 years, and I wound up with a cancer despite 30 years later. And all of them are shocked, and all of them react saying like, oh, you made me think about this. And some people which are, say, your age, no, older than you in their 40s, say, but you get kids? Yeah, and you want to see them graduate, right? You want to see them getting married, don't you? And it's like, oh my God. And then I start creating a bit of this pain image that you feel that you're not going to see your kids graduate. I mean, how painful is that? That you're going to leave your family and die because you're smoking? So I'm planting these seeds with these people where I'm hoping that when this grows, creates this fear and this worry that will motivate them to quit smoking, right? So I'm not saying you need to quit smoking. I'm focusing on the pain, future pain they're going to have if they don't, potentially. So your point is very well taken, both of you. I think it's very rich. But the caution is not everybody is willing and able to deal with that. Many people get scared of that. That future image of pain is more scary than the pain itself. It becomes an obstacle.
Right. So from what you just did, instead of thinking of the future pain, you actually calculated existing damage and multiplied that over and over.
That's what I did, yes.
If there's no change. So I think that's also a helpful tip. If you can't imagine because it could be, cost you, because could cause great pain or fear, why not just calculate existing damage and multiply that how many times over into the future? Gives you a concrete idea of the potential pain that will happen. That's actually a really, really good advice.
There's a third leg, like everything has at least 3 legs not to fall over. The fear of failure is in change fundamental, massive. Because I remember I had that fear that said, I'm going to tell people I'm going to quit smoking, and then as a manager, going, I knew you couldn't. I knew you were not going to. I know you're weak. I know you don't have the character. I know you don't have the temper. I know you don't have the determination. Because that's we humans have a tendency to put people down and not build them up. It's unfortunately in the way we do things very often. Not our coaches and mentees, of course, because we train them to be different and behave differently, but many people do. And one of the key things is that I did, and I share this with people, is I used to carry a pack of cigarettes, half full, a lighter inside the box, and the box in my pocket, and didn't tell no one I was going to quit. And I decided in my mind, I don't smoke because I don't want, not because I can't. Because when you're lacking something that you want, when you want to eat chocolate and you have chocolate in the house, maybe you resist eating chocolate. If you want to eat chocolate and you have no chocolate, you need to go buy chocolate. And the same is with cigarettes, the same is with food, the same is with many things. If you have it, you have a relationship with it, then you are in a position to manage that relationship and make a decision to not do certain things or delay them or break them into units, smaller units. If you don't have it, it's lacking, it compounds the need, it compounds the fear, it compounds this feeling of necessity, and then all this other positive thinking you could have when you're in the relationship with change, that, well, maybe I do have it, but I don't want it now. I'm going to postpone. I don't want immediate gratification. I can postpone my gratification. I can split my gratification in smaller pieces, like little squares. Smoking was the same thing. So I put it in my pocket, and that was a major instrument, taking away the fear of being put down, of failure. Because if I failed, I was the only one that knew that I failed. So I didn't fail, really. I postponed success. And that is critical. We don't fail. We didn't succeed yet.
That's a good way to look at it. We didn't fail. We haven't succeeded yet. Wow.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, yeah. So, wow, that's any fourth leg you'd want to add to the chair?
No, not on this podcast.
Okay.
We want our audience to come back and listen to more.
That's right. So we want our audience to come back. So if you're listening right now and you're listening to this podcast, we want to encourage you to share, leave a comment. If you have questions for us, please do email us.
Well, go to the website, Revolving Change.
Yeah.
There is, you can reach out to me or to you or to the coaches, or, there's easy ways to reach us through the website.
That is
revolvingchange.com.
Yes, change.com or any of our socials. But I guess that is it for now. This has been Joanna. You have Isaac and Mr. Jorge for Revolving Change for you today. Catch you again next time.
I'm running the water.
Ciao.
Ciao. Thank you. Ciao.